Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramona, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with the Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I am fired up to have you join us today. We dedicated this podcast to exploring the idea of doing your work in your life with a servant's heart. And when you approach your work in your lives with that servant's heart, you can truly make a difference. Who wouldn't want to make a difference? I know I try to every day, and my guest is going to blow you away how she makes a difference. We also created this show to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you to make an impact in your world. So when you make a difference, you make an impact and good things happen. One suggestion while listening to the show is think about how you're going to serve yourself and others today and what impact you create today. And the key word, let's do it today. Let's not wait 6 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 days. When you listen to her and get motivated, go ahead and start changing somebody's life. And I want to thank my incredible partner, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine being part of an exclusive community of high income, very successful business owners and entrepreneurs from very diverse industries. Together, they're forming a thought leader platform to impact and change everybody's world. For more information on that community, just reach out to me at any time and I'll get you that information. With that being said, I am fired up because transformation is out there. It's been talked about, leadership. It's a great combination of words, but are you really being transformed? Are you really being transformational? Are you being transactional? I talk about that all the time when I keynote speak. So I want to welcome my incredible guest, Regina. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Steve. I am delighted to be here, totally jazzed up as you're fired up.
Oh, and she's from Paris. We have an international show today, which I love going international. I didn't have to do a plane flight. So I saved money on my plane ride. I could just do it right on Zoom. It's so great. You had 3 words that you said to me: inspire, amazing life for people. That's 5 words, but inspire me. Talk about that, because I think that's powerful.
Yes. In my business, I, as a leadership coach, I love to work with people who want to be bold, heart-centered leaders. You could also call it servant leaders, of course. And I don't just want them to be great as leaders and serve their teams, which is, of course, the ultimate goal of any heart-driven leader. However, they also deserve to live that life that's perfect for them. And I call that a freaking amazing life. And I really love to support my clients so they can become thriving leaders. And this, yes, it does imply up-leveling leadership skills sometimes and keeping stress levels low for themselves and for their teams, and also accelerating their own careers. But as you already mentioned in your introduction, it also implies making an impact and getting that reward and getting that fulfillment, that feeling that you're doing something meaningful every single day from that leadership work, right? And this is what this is all about. Living My Freaking Amazing Life is also the title of my newest book. It's really, as the subtitle says, meant to help people or inspire people to create the life that's perfect for them anywhere in the world.
I like the for them too, because everybody's life's going to be different.
Absolutely.
What I love about you, Regina, when I kind of stalked you, I did research audience. I didn't stalk her, but I love saying that. It just sounds so funny. I don't know, maybe it's not, but you've had a number of leadership roles, and I think experience makes a great coach, a great teacher. What did you learn from those roles?
First of all, I was thrown into the cold water at first in my very first leadership role at a global consulting firm. Boston Consulting Group. That was back many years ago in Madrid. And I was a manager and leader for the Boston Consulting Group in several different locations on several continents. But the very first role was at age 27, and I had zero leadership background, no relevant studies, no nothing. I had just moved to Madrid 10 months earlier, just learned the language, and I was unexpectedly promoted into this role that became available because another lady left. So I was surprised. And what I learned from that experience was that we can learn so much from doing in life. You don't always have to have all those certifications. Yes, it's good to have leadership knowledge in advance. I would have liked that. I didn't have it, so I needed to make the best of my situation back then. And I believe that what really helped me is that I came from that authentic place of wanting to serve, wanting to make a difference for the people in my team. And, I was quite young, and there were some people who in my team who were quite a bit older than me. So I thought at first maybe they will not accept me, but because I came from that heart-centered place and they noticed that I really was there to do my best in their interest, that's how I gained their trust, I believe, back then. And then, of course, from there, I tried to really catch up on my leadership of myself and of others, because, of course, leadership always starts with self. And when we become better leaders of self, which I certainly did through all these different experiences in different locations in the world, as I had to adapt to every single location and learned a lot in that process, I, of course, added that leadership experience and was now able to practice leadership in a more conscious way, in a more intentional way, than in the beginning. So this is, and then of course I was also a leader as a business owner in Argentina, in Brazil, and eventually in New York City. And in Argentina, I had a small team. I owned a bed and breakfast. So it's a completely different business. I also had to be a leader for the business because I was dealing with some corrupt authorities. So, leadership takes many different faces sometimes. And later again in Brazil with a second brick and mortar business and a fraudulent business partner, I had to stand up as a leader and also defend my own interests at that time, and eventually move by using a self-empowering mindset into a different, more empowering place again, and start a new business in New York City. So
that's where
there's a lot more to say, but
and there's so many awesome lessons you just put out there. But I've had over 500 shows talking about servant leadership and servant's heart. Nobody's mentioned, and nothing against the other guests, but I want to highlight this. You jumped into an opportunity at 27, not knowing anything, but your first thought was a servant leader, and you became successful. The company's still probably going today. So audience, listen to that. When you're starting something new, be more of a servant's heart, because people will rally around you and help you grow, because you can't do it yourself. I liked you before. I love you now, because that's so cool. Now, the other thing that you do with your program is you have these 5 signature coaching frameworks. What are they, and how do they help me become a better leader and transform me?
Yes, you can find them on the frameworks page of my website, transformyourperformance.com. So the first one that I started out with was what I call your powerful leadership transformation. I mentioned self-leadership before. So this framework is a lot about the leadership of self. However, once you master this powerful leadership transformation and the content of this framework, of course, then you can also pass it on to your team. You pass it on through who you have become as a leader, through your growth as a leader, because it's gonna shine through you. So you're gonna pass it on organically. And then of course you will also pass it on because you want to make a difference and want to be a servant leader to your team. So you want to also give them the knowledge that you have learned, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of them, and it has 4 pillars. One of them I already mentioned by sharing my story earlier, because it had such a big role in my life, and that is a self-empowering mindset and heart set. Then the second pillar is your distinctive uniqueness. You could also call it your unique brilliance. We gotta know, own, and show that. And then a body and energy conscious presence and inspired and effective action. These are the 4 components. And then there are some other frameworks like the new paradigm leadership, which has 4 main elements. This is more focused on your team and how to create happier and more engaged teams. And this again is called the new paradigm leadership. And then again, I could go through all of them. The thriving leader formula is really more the foundation for my one-on-one coaching programs. Then we have the unique assets framework and so on and so forth, right? We can basically create frameworks for anything. The frameworks to me are not so much a guide on how to lead someone through a coaching program as they are a conceptualization so that people actually understand what I'm all about.
Yeah.
Because the coaching
perfect.
Programs are customized and tailored.
Yeah, and self-awareness is huge in leadership. If you're not self-aware, it's really hard to be a leader. It's probably almost impossible. I don't like to say impossible because some things happen. I want to talk about your podcast because you have some great leaders on there, great people doing great things. Talk about the mission, the inspiration of the podcast.
Yes. So with my podcast, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to create a hub for leadership experts, whether they are whether they have leadership roles, or whether they are leadership coaches, or whether they just have some awesome leadership traits. I wanted to bring them together and create that hub for open conversations about leadership, and also really an opportunity to bring fresh ideas to leadership. So, for example, I had a guy who definitely does not have a leadership position right now, or no formal leadership role, but he's probably the most emotionally intelligent guy that I have met lately. He's a young guy in England, and I wanted to have him on the show because emotional intelligence is such an important leadership trait. And I wanted to highlight this. And I think he did that very successfully. It was amazing because it was actually his very first podcast interview. And then I also want to bring a musician friend on soon as he makes the time, because he's so very busy. But yes, because I want to bring people from different walks of life together. Also have had some other wonderful podcast hosts because they are leaders in their very, very own way. And that's the type of conversation I want to spark, is how can we make leadership even better, both for the leaders and those they serve, right? Those they lead. And that's my quest.
It's a very educational audience. Check it out. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Rise to Lead.
Oh, so you got great names. I got to find your marketing person. They're doing a great job. Maybe it's you. I don't know. It's great. One thing about leadership and servant leadership, it's not only professional, it spills over into the personal. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Absolutely. I talked about authenticity before. Well, your leadership should show us who you are, because how would we trust you as a leader if we don't know who you are? And so this is how then you are the same person as a leader professionally in your whatever that looks like, whether you own a business, or whether you are in corporate, or whether you lead a band of musicians. It doesn't really matter. we want to see that person also in your personal life. So how do you show up in both? And if you are not the same person, that's actually very strenuous. It's very stressful because it takes a lot of energy to be someone you are not all day, right? And so I always, of course, yes, we have certain things about us that we don't want to show to everybody. I think everybody has some secrets, and you don't want to spill all your intimate secrets. That's not what authenticity really is. It just really is that means, in my opinion, in the leadership context, that you show up as the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And you want to do that in all areas of your life.
Yeah.
Also,
and
sometimes
I like that. Go ahead.
Yes,
keep going.
go ahead.
I'm just going to say it's Halloween week, and you fit it well with the skeletons in the closet. We keep the skeletons in the closet. And thank you for that, because a lot of people lose sight of that. They're great leaders in companies, but then they're going through a divorce. And I've talked to leaders and founders, and it's tough. Now, we're not saying it's easy here, but trying to be the same in both is so powerful. You're going to be more successful, correct?
Sorry?
You'll be more successful if you can manage that authenticity between both the personal and professional.
Yes, I totally believe that, especially in the long run, if you are really looking to be sustainably successful.
Yeah. What's the leadership? You've been in Africa and Latin America and Asia. You've been everywhere. You're amazing. Just keep saying that because I go through your profile. It's amazing. Is leadership different in other countries than it is in America?
Look, there are different styles. Of course, we're all influenced by our cultures, by our environments. I have found that the challenges are often quite similar. However, there are different ways to approach those challenges or to approach leadership. And I always like to pick the best pieces from everywhere and keep those and leave the rest. You know, I've lived in many places. I've done the same. I observe culture. I observe habits of people. I observe customs, and I evaluate them for myself. And I try to figure out, okay, what's valuable, what's less valuable, what works, what doesn't necessarily work so well, and what works in which environment, what works where. I think that's also something important to consider, because people are different. You know, I do not like to stereotype, and we should avoid it as much as possible, but we do observe as we move around in the world. We observe certain traits in people who come from a certain place, you know.
Yep.
That's unavoidable because where we live shapes us.
And we need to understand it. You're making me think of Italy. You know, I have an Italian background, and I think they take a whole month off. They close businesses and they just go on vacation. Now, that would never happen in America. Might be a great idea. We should be doing it. But right there, if you're working in Italy, knowing that culture it's so powerful, what you said. Well, leadership took a big, go ahead. I was just going to say answer.
No, I just wanted to add. So I lived in Spain. You know, we would also close for about 3 weeks in August. However, it was also an extremely intense work environment for the rest of the year. You know, so we work long hours. What sometimes people don't see is the other side of it.
Yeah.
It really depends also a lot on the organization itself. Of course, I was at a consulting firm, which you know, tends to be quite intense anyway. However, I also wanted to say that it was probably one of the environments where I worked the most hours while I was at the firm.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's powerful. And I was going to say was leadership took a hit during COVID. And the hit is, and I've never asked this, but you're a perfect person to ask this. We've gone hybrid. People are working from home. They're not in front of you as a leader. How do people handle that? Or how do you think they should handle that?
Well, if you do not have that direct human interaction, that in-person interaction, then we have to compensate for that. That's at least what I believe, because I see it with myself. When I speak in person in front of an audience, the impact I have there is more important. Let's just face it, because there is that human direct in-person element that we don't have online. Yeah. So while I love to do podcasts, and while I love to guest and have my own podcast and do all the online speaking and coaching, because it keeps me mobile and I love to move around and I'm a bit of a nomad. Having said that, I do appreciate that element that we cannot have in an online environment, right? So I love going to in-person networking events and to speak in person because of that. So when we do not have this, we need to make up for it, meaning that sometimes we might need to establish an infrastructure to make sure that we periodically follow up with people on specific progress, for example, or that we make sure that we know how our team is doing, because we're not going to run into them at in the coffee kitchen or at the water
water cooler, they say. Yeah,
water cooler. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think what it requires is more structure and potentially also more frequency.
Yeah, and compensate's a great word, Regina. Powerful word. I like that, because and we have to pivot. What one thing COVID taught business owners, you had to pivot, and this is part of the pivot of your employees aren't in front of you all the time. I know I talked to some founders like, I don't know what they're doing right now. Well, you gotta have trust in them. That's the servant leader and the structure that you mentioned. So powerful.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end here. You're so awesome. I know I said it 3 times. What's a great tip you can leave the audience to be a better leader?
A great tip is, you just mentioned trust, right? I want to pick that up, because trust is a two-way street. And yes, we expect our team to trust us. Of course, we have to work for that. We have to build trust so that they trust us. But also, we need to trust our teams as well. For example, by delegating with their growth in mind and not being so protective about some of the more important tasks. So this is something that I would like to leave leaders with.
And I've rarely heard the two-way street on trust. We forget that. Oh, take care of the team, but you might have that team member that doesn't trust you or doesn't fit the culture. And you've got to, as a leader, sometimes say goodbye to people in a servant mentality. That's such a powerful lesson. Man, you're blowing me away, but I want to have some fun with you right now. You ready to have some fun?
Sure.
Let's do a little improv. This is get to learn a little bit more about Regina. You have a reservation at a restaurant in France. Since you're in France, you have 4 seats in the table. You're obviously occupying one of the seats. And the other 3 seats, who would you invite, dead or alive? Why would they be invited? And what food would you order?
I would invite my dad, who already passed on, because he was the adventurous inspiration in my life, and I would love to have a few chats with him. I would like to invite a very special friend in Argentina who I have not talked to in a while, at least not in person, Ana Maria. And she's just such a beautiful soul, and she loves to eat. She will appreciate this invitation so very much.
Good quality.
And then I would invite somebody who has been a very generous new friend here, a Congolese friend. His name is Loic. And I met him at some hotel breakfast in Paris. and he's a young guy, and he's been also just so welcoming. When you are new to a place, I'm not always here. So I split my time. However, I've been spending more time here. And I didn't know a soul when I came here. So that's just really beautiful. So I just want to give him that joy. What would I order? I would order... I need to now go by my dad. So I would order him a nice. I'm torn between the steak and a really beautiful salad, and
Let's do both. Let's just do both.
yeah, let's do also let's do a coq au vin.
That's definitely a servant's heart table to sit at. You really got people close to you that you could serve with. That's so powerful. I want to thank you, Regina. You are a blessing to leadership, blessing to people out there. You're really transforming people. I know audience people are like, how can I get a hold of her? So how can they contact you and support you?
Yes, I have my website that I already mentioned, transformationalperformance.com. There's also a contact page on that website. I am on LinkedIn as Regina Huber. I have a LinkedIn career growth strategies newsletter where I also write about leadership, and a YouTube channel at Regina Huber, apart from, of course, my Rise to Lead podcast, where I would love to welcome everybody. And
Yes.
maybe you'd also like to subscribe so that you get to know all my wonderful guests.
I love that. And definitely subscribe, because I'm going to tell you in a minute why. Again, thank you so much, Regina. And
Thank you
audience,
so much.
you're very welcome. We're going to have you back. A little surprise. Audience, you heard it. She's coming back for part 2. We'll figure out a time and place. This leadership is so important. But as she mentioned, subscribe to her podcast and subscribe to mine. Here's the why you subscribe. And I think Regina from A Servant's Heart will understand. Yeah, subscribers are great and that number and all that. But it's more important is you'll be able to find this podcast. You can go back to it. But even more important, you have a family or friend that needs to be a better leader or wants to be a better leader. Share this podcast and they can learn all about Regina, what she does and how she does it, and how passionate she is about transformational leadership and servant leadership. It's such a powerful tool. That's what I see the power of podcasting. So do that. Comment on the YouTube channel as well. If it's for Regina, I'll make sure she gets the comment. If it's a critique away, because me and Regina do this podcast for you. It's not for us. It's for you to educate, motivate, and inspire. Don't forget my TV show, Together We Serve, every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. It's on e360tv.com and all your Roku, Apple TV, and all those different channels. With that being said, me and Regina want to thank you all so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And we'll see you on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.